This year was the first year the White Sox made the playoffs since 2008. They then fired their manager, who led them to that. A few weeks later, they made a questionable decision by hiring Tony La Russa as their new manager. This was controversial because 1, he is an old-style coach who doesn't like flashy players like Tim Anderson. 2, he doesn't support his players kneeling for the national anthem. And 3, he was arrested back in February for driving under influence. On the other hand, La Russa has won 3 World Series titles and 4 Manager of the Year awards. He has the 3rd most career wins of any manager and is a member of the Hall of Fame. People make mistakes, but this was still an extremely controversial hire by the White Sox. Let's listen to what Stephen A. Smith and Max Kellerman have to say about it.
Sit there and have months to think about this, knowing that you had that DUI charge out there, and talking to folks like, do you know who I am, et cetera, et cetera. It reeks of privilege and entitlement, and certainly in this day and age, I think that we've learned on various occasions throughout the last few months. The one thing that's incredibly alarming to me, guys, is that we will sit up there and let grown men who are in leadership positions, who happen to be white, get away with things we don't tolerate from kids trying to learn their way through life in their early 20s. We seem to hold youngsters who haven't even learned about adulthood and manhood yet. We seem to hold them more accountable than we hold people in leadership positions. I think this is the latest example of that, and I think it's incredibly unfortunate.
Tony La Russa should be fired. In fact, he should have never gotten hired in the first place. Jeff Passan wrote an excellent article. It's on ESPN.com when La Russa got hired, talking about cronyism. And that's really how he got his job, because eyebrows were raised. Tony La Russa for that team? That doesn't make any sense. The fit wasn't right. And eyebrows were raised throughout baseball. And Passan writes this article about cronyism and how it works. I suggest you read it. But it's more than that, Stephen A. Why should La Russa lose his job? Do you remember, here are some recent press conferences of introductions to head coaches, you know, which a manager is, that you were like, whoa, what just happened? Remember when Sark got the job, Sarkisian, at USC?
Yes.
How he showed up to that press conference?
Yes.
Right. What's going on here? He seems inebriated, right? Like that's a shocking way to introduce on your introductory press conference.
Don't forget
Who
Adam
else
Gase.
can you think of, Stephen A?
Adam Gase. Don't forget.
Adam Gase, right?
Yeah.
Adam Gase.
He looked high.
Whatever it was bizarre behavior. And how did that work out? When you introduce yourself that way, how does that work out? You don't have it together. You shouldn't be in charge. You talk about holding people in positions of authority to the same standards we hold younger people. How do you lead men like that or a group of people like that? What kind of example does it set? It also suggests you don't have stuff together in your own life enough, your own personal life, to be effective in a professional position that requires leadership. And Sark didn't at the time, and neither does Gase, it is apparent, right? Okay, so here is La Russa, who basically shows up, if not to the press conference, on the scene with an issue, and then here quickly it is exposed, right? Another issue. And it's even worse than you think, because not only is it a DWI charge, but he's trying to use his status to get out of it. Now, let's look at that status. How did he attain that status? La Russa is one of the best managers of my lifetime if you're looking for the bottom line. Can you win? He can. How did he exactly win? Jack McDowell, former Cy Young Award winner, Stephen A. with the White Sox, pitched for the Yankees, won 15 games with the Yankees toward the end of his career. He's a very good pitcher. Said that when he got there, so he comes after La Russa, but when he got to the White Sox, sign stealing was already in place. They would flash a light from the center field scoreboard, and you could see the catcher. There was, like, in the manager's office, there's a screen zoomed in on the catcher, and you're flashing lights. And according to McDowell, that's a holdover from the La Russa era. And when La Russa was asked about it, he said he wasn't on that team. Ask McDowell if he was on that team. That's not a denial. You're trying to deflect. That's not saying unequivocally, I never did that, I didn't install that, we didn't do that. Why are you attacking the messenger? This is what McDowell knows, at least as far as his knowledge goes. It was in place from La Russa when he got there. Let's talk more about Tony La Russa. Great manager, right? The Oakland A's was the flashpoint for the steroids era. Not that guys weren't juicing beforehand, but oh my God, the Bash brothers, the whole thing. There were guys on that team, I won't mention any names, who were mediocre hitters most of their career. They got to the A's. Oh, my God, playing defensive positions where they were slugging, right? How did it just mysteriously happen? Then he goes to St. Louis. Stephen A., the St. Louis Cardinals, he won again with them. There were once again players on the Cardinals. These are good players. It's not like they weren't good players when they got to the Cardinals. They were. But they hit like they never hit before with the Cardinals. Why is that? Because magically Larussa has some pixie dust he sprinkles on everyone, they start hitting? Maybe. Maybe it is pixie dust, except instead of sprinkling it, you ingest it or inject it, right? Maybe, because that's certainly what was happening in Oakland. So here's a guy who gets his job from cronyism, where there is good, at least circumstantial evidence to suspect he's cheated in the past in a variety of ways with a variety of teams. And then he shows up, and this is what he does walking in the door. If you own the White Sox, you got to get rid of him. You got to do it today.
Well, what I will say is the reason I don't bring up the past in that regard, Max Kellerman, is only because do we have substantial evidence that would implicate him being complicit in those things that you mentioned in terms of steroids and things of that nature. The point is that, you know, again, if that's not the case, then I can't hold him accountable but so much for that, because a lot of guys do a lot of things on their own. Remember when that list came out with guys that were using performance-enhancing drugs and things of that nature, it was about 103 names on that list. And a lot of times teammates swore that they didn't know. So if the teammates didn't know, who's to say the manager or the coaches knew? That's just how I look at it. Obviously, I don't know because I haven't been covering. I don't cover the teams. But one could deduce that it's pretty hard to hold them accountable for that. But at the end of the day, again, when you're 76 years old, when you stepped away from the game in 2011, and it's nearly 9 years later, and the White Sox, of all people, feel the need to bring you on, the question that I've got for the organization is that in the year 2020, how is it that you couldn't come up with somebody else just a little bit fresher? It's just my analysis of it all. That's all.
Speaking of the year 2020.
And by the way, real quick, guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, real quick, I just want to say, Larussa, upon getting this job, had to walk back comments he made 4 years ago about Kaepernick and kneeling and questioning Kaepernick's sincerity and talking about how he would forbid one of his players from doing the same thing. He had to walk back those comments to seem as though he got with the times. My point is, Stephen A., people are allowed to feel how they feel, right? Although I think a manager is overstepping his bounds, telling a player how he should or shouldn't participate in a ceremony. Nevertheless, think of how many strikes against him. It doesn't make sense in the modern game, making the statements he made with the past problems he's had.
Now I want to hear your thoughts on this. Leave them in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to subscribe for more just like this one, and I'll see you next time.